Okay, 4.1, 6 marker is a bit of a intimidating looking question, but I'm just going to take some time to read through it and plan my response. So we've got to take 3 solid samples of 3 anhydrous sodium compounds. Now the first thing I've identified there is that they're anhydrous, they're dry. And they're provided for a student to identify. These compounds are known to be sodium carbonate, sodium fluoride and sodium chloride, but it is not known which sample is which. Now we have to outline a logical sequence of test tube reactions that we could carry out to identify these compounds. We need to include the observations and any equations, including the state symbols for any reactions that would take place. Now, just to do a quick little bit of planning then, the idea is here we've got carbonate, fluoride and chloride. So the first thing I'm going to do is just identify some tests that I could carry out to identify each of these different substances. So immediately we've got a carbonate. To test for a carbonate, we generally just add some acid and we'll see fizzing. So I'm going to put that here, fizzes with acid. Fluoride and chloride then, I can use silver nitrate. And for each of these two, I will get different observations. The chloride will actually turn white and produce a precipitate, whereas the fluoride will produce no precipitate, nothing will happen. So from there then, now I've got a bit of a plan of what it is I'm going to do. I can think about putting this down into a method and thinking about how I can make this logical. Now, when it comes to identifying different substances, the best way to go about this is to work in an order where you can pick off different substances. So if I could start with this order, then if I can add acid to all 3 of these substances and one of them will fizz, I can get rid of my carbonate. So the first thing I'm going to do in my method then is just choose an acid. I'm going to use hydrochloric. I'm going to add hydrochloric acid to all 3 substances. And the carbonate can be identified as it will fizz or produce bubbles. So I've identified there then the method in a logical order and the observation I would make here. Now that means I can get rid of the carbonate. And in the next step, I can add water to the remaining 2. Now the reason I'm going to do that is because the question told me that these substances were anhydrous, they were all dry substances to begin with. Now I want my fluoride and my chloride to react with the silver nitrate, so I'm going to need them to be in aqueous solution. So I'm going to add water to the remaining 2 and I'm then going to add my silver nitrate. At this point, I'm going to record my 2 observations then. So the chloride will produce a white precipitate and the fluoride will have no reaction. Now within that then I've got my logical sequencing and also my observations. I now need to go on to then giving the equations, making sure that each of them has the correct state symbols. So I'm going to need to use my method to help me work out what the state symbols would be. So if I start off with my hydrochloric acid, I'm going to add that to my sodium carbonate. So sodium carbonate will be Na2CO3. I can then identify the salt that will be made. So we've got a chloride salt and we've got sodium. So we're going to get sodium chloride plus, because we've got a carbonate, we're going to have carbon dioxide plus water. Okay, so there is my equation. Now I need to add my state symbols. So my sodium carbonate is going to be solid because I identified that that was anhydrous. My hydrochloric acid is going to be aqueous. I've then got sodium chloride salt, which is going to be aqueous, carbon dioxide gas, and H2O, which is going to be a liquid. I've then got, for my next step, I'm going to add some silver nitrate, which is going to be aqueous as well. I'm going to add that to my sodium chloride because I don't need to put an equation for the reaction with sodium fluoride because nothing is going to happen. My sodium chloride, now I did add water to this sodium chloride, so it's going to be aqueous. And here we're going to get the insoluble salt of silver chloride, which is going to be the thing producing our white colour. And also we're going to get sodium nitrate, which as well is going to be in solution.